At our engagement dinner, my daughter's fiancé leaned across the table and whispered something that made my blood run cold. "Sign over 49% of Blackwood Vineyards to me before the wedding, or I'll make sure everyone knows what your daughter really is." His smile never wavered as he reached for his wine glass. That's when I knew I had exactly 37 days to save my daughter from the biggest mistake of her life. My name is Robert Blackwood, and I've spent 42 years building something that mattered. Not just a business, but a legacy. When my wife Catherine passed from cancer 6 years ago, I promised her I'd keep our family together. Our daughter Madison was everything to us. Smart, compassionate, a veterinarian who genuinely cared about healing. She'd never shown much interest in the vineyard, and that was fine. I never wanted to force anything on her. Then she brought Ethan home. It was a Tuesday evening in March when Madison called. Her voice had that breathless quality I hadn't heard since she was 16 and got into veterinary school. "Dad, I need you to sit down. I have incredible news." My hand tightened around the phone. Nothing good ever started with those words. "I'm engaged." The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Madison and I had always been close, especially after Catherine died. We talked every week, had dinner twice a month. She'd been dating someone for a few months, some guy named Ethan who worked in commercial real estate. She'd mentioned him exactly 3 times, always in passing, never with any real depth. And now she was engaged. "Madison, sweetheart, that's wonderful." I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "When do I get to meet him?" "Saturday dinner? At your place? I want him to see the vineyard, meet you properly." There was something in her voice. Not quite nervousness, but something close. Like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. That Saturday, I cleaned the main house for the first time in months, put out Catherine's good china, made her recipe for coq au vin. I wanted to make a good impression, wanted to believe my daughter had found someone who made her happy. The vineyard looked beautiful that evening. 50 acres of carefully tended vines stretching toward the Texas Hill Country horizon, the sunset painting everything gold and red. Ethan arrived in a Tesla. I noticed that first. Noticed how he spent 30 seconds looking at Madison and 3 minutes looking at the house. He was 34, tall, with the kind of practiced smile that probably worked great in sales meetings. His handshake was too firm, held too long, his eyes already calculating something I couldn't quite read. "Mr. Blackwood, Madison talks about this place constantly." He gestured broadly at the vineyard. "Family business, right? 4th generation?" "5th, actually. My great-great-grandfather planted the first vines in 1887. I led them inside, watching how Ethan's gaze cataloged everything. The original hardwood floors. The custom wine cellar visible through glass doors. The artwork Catherine and I had collected over decades. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Ethan asked about the vineyard with what seemed like genuine interest. Asked about production volume, distribution, profit margins. Questions that felt increasingly less like polite conversation and more like a business audit. "So, Madison tells me she's not really involved in the operation," Ethan said, cutting his chicken with precise movements. "That must be difficult, building something like this without family to pass it to." Something in my gut tightened. Madison has her own calling. I'm proud of what she does. "Of course. Of course." Ethan's smile widened. "But long term, what happens to all this? Have you thought about succession planning?" Madison touched his arm. "Ethan, we just got here. I'm just curious, babe. Your dad built something amazing. Someone needs to think about these things." He turned back to me. "I actually have a lot of experience with family business transitions. Commercial real estate, private equity, that sort of thing. I've helped several families navigate these exact situations." The rest of dinner, Ethan dominated the conversation. Talked about his portfolio, his connections, his vision for expanding into wine country investments. Madison barely spoke. Just watched him with this look that reminded me of how she used to watch injured animals at her clinic. Like she wanted to heal something broken, but wasn't sure if she could. After dinner, I gave them a tour of the property. Ethan's questions got more specific. Asked about property values, zoning, what the land alone might be worth. asked if I'd ever considered selling to a larger vineyard group, what kind of offers I'd received. Each question felt like a test, like he was building a map of something only he could see. As they were leaving, Ethan shook my hand again. We should talk more about the business side of things. Maybe over lunch next week? Just the two of us? I watched them drive away, Ethan's Tesla disappearing down the gravel road. The cocoa vin sat heavy in my stomach. I walked back into the house and called the one person whose judgment I trusted more than my own. Marcus Chen answered on the second ring. Robert, it's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. Someone better be dead. Marcus and I had served together in the army. Decades ago. He'd gone into private investigation, built a reputation for being thorough and discreet. We'd stayed close over the years. The kind of friendship where months could pass without contact, but nothing fundamental ever changed. I need you to look into someone, I said. His name is Ethan Pierce. He's engaged to Madison. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What did he do? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I don't know yet, but something doesn't feel right. And I need to know if I'm being paranoid or if my instincts are finally worth something. Send me everything you know. I'll start digging. That lunch with Ethan happened the following Thursday. We met at a steakhouse in downtown Austin, the kind of place where deals got made and people talked in low voices about money. Ethan ordered the most expensive whiskey on the menu before lunch even arrived. Robert, I'm glad we're doing this. He leaned forward, his tone confidential. I love your daughter. She's incredible. But I'm also a practical man, and I think we should talk about some practical matters. Sukaz, your daughter is about to become my wife. That means we're family, and family takes care of each other. He paused, letting that sink in. Madison mentioned you've been handling the vineyard alone since your wife passed. That's a lot for one person. Have you thought about bringing in a partner? Someone with business experience who could help modernize operations, expand distribution. The vineyard does fine as it is. Fine isn't great, though. Ethan's smile had edges now. I've been researching Texas wine country. Property values are skyrocketing. With the right investment and management, Blackwood Vineyards could be worth 10 times what it is now. Maybe more. I'm not interested in selling. Who said anything about selling? He took a sip of his whiskey. I'm talking about partnership. You bring the land and the legacy. I bring capital and expertise. We grow this thing together. As family. The waiter brought our steaks. Mine sat untouched, while Ethan cut into his like we were discussing the weather. Here's what I'm thinking, Ethan continued. Before the wedding, you transfer 49% ownership to me. Not a gift, an investment. I'll put in capital, handle expansion, bring in my network. You keep majority control, stay involved as much as you want. But we build this together, make it something your great-great-grandfather could never have imagined. And if I say no? Ethan set down his fork carefully. Then we have a problem. See, Madison and I have been talking. She's worried about you, Robert. Worried you're getting older, making decisions that aren't in your best interest. If you won't accept help from family, well, that raises questions about your judgment, your capacity to manage complex affairs. The threat was clear now, hanging between us like smoke. Agree to his terms, or he'd use Madison to question my competency, maybe even push for some kind of intervention. I need to think about it, I said, forcing my voice to stay level. Of course. Take your time. We've got 5 weeks until the wedding. Ethan smiled and raised his glass. To family. I drove back to the vineyard with my hands shaking, not from fear, but from rage. This man had looked at my daughter and seen a tool, looked at my life's work and seen an opportunity, and he was betting I loved Madison too much to fight back. He was right about the love part, wrong about everything else. Marcus called 2 days later. We need to talk, in person, now. He showed up at the vineyard that evening with a folder thick enough to be a manuscript. We sat in my office, and he spread documents across the desk like laying out evidence at a crime scene. Ethan Pierce isn't his real name, Marcus said without preamble. He was born Ethan Kowalski, changed it legally 7 years ago, right after his second divorce. Second, he's been married 3 times. First wife, Angela Chen, married when he was 26. She came from a family that owned a chain of auto repair shops in California. Marriage lasted 18 months. When they divorced, she'd signed over her inheritance rights to him during the marriage. He liquidated the shops, walked away with $2 million. My stomach dropped. And the second wife? Jennifer Park, Korean-American, family owned a successful restaurant group in Seattle. Same pattern. Whirlwind romance, quick engagement, married within 6 months. During the marriage, he convinced her to make him a partner in the business. 2 years later, divorce. He forced a sale of the restaurants, took half the proceeds. Another $3 million. Third wife? Sarah Bennett. Real estate developer's daughter from Phoenix. This one was smarter. She had a prenup. When she started noticing discrepancies in their finances, she filed for divorce. But here's the interesting part. Marcus pulled out another document. She tried to warn the next woman. Ethan threatened her with a defamation lawsuit, made her sign an NDA as part of the divorce settlement. She couldn't tell anyone what he'd done. I stared at the documents, my vision blurring. Madison is number 4. Gets worse. I found 2 other women between wife 3 and Madison, both from wealthy families. Both engagements ended abruptly with harassment claims that mysteriously disappeared after settlements were paid. This guy is a professional. He targets daughters of wealthy families, identifies which ones might be vulnerable, isolated. He builds a relationship, moves fast, then extracts assets through marriage and manipulation. Why hasn't he been arrested? Because he's technically not breaking laws. Everything he does is legal. Unethical as hell, but legal. He finds women who want to believe in love, families who want to believe in second chances. By the time anyone realizes what he is, he's already got his hooks in so deep that fighting him means destroying the family. I picked up one of the documents. A photo of Ethan, younger, standing outside a courthouse with his second wife. She looked happy. He looked hungry. There's more, Marcus said quietly. I tracked his finances. He burned through the money from the first 2 divorces. Gambling, bad investments, expensive lifestyle. He's broke, Robert, deep in debt. Madison isn't just a target. She's his last shot at staying afloat. I need copies of everything. Already made them? But Robert, you need to be careful here. This guy is smart. If he suspects you're onto him, he'll accelerate his timeline or turn Madison against you completely. Right now, you have one advantage. He doesn't know, you know. After Marcus left, I sat in my office until dawn, reading through every document, every marriage certificate, every divorce filing, every business transfer. The pattern was clear. Ethan was a predator, and my daughter was his prey. The question was how to save her without losing her in the process. I started with small things. Invited Madison to lunch, just the 2 of us. Tried to ask gentle questions about the relationship, about the rush to get married. She deflected each one with the kind of defensive optimism that broke my heart. Dad, I know what you're thinking, but Ethan isn't like that. He loves me for me, not because of the vineyard or money or anything else. He's had a rough past, but he's changed. I'm helping him become the person he was meant to be. Classic pattern. She'd been cast as his savior, his redemption arc. Confronting her directly would only push her further into his arms. So I called my lawyer instead. Gerald Hayes had been the Blackwood family attorney for 30 years. He'd helped Catherine and me with estate planning, handled every legal aspect of the vineyard. When I explained the situation, his response was immediate. We need a prenuptial agreement, non-negotiable, and we need to restructure the vineyard ownership right now, before the wedding. How? We create a family trust. You transfer ownership of Blackwood Vineyards to the trust. You're the trustee with full control during your lifetime. Upon your death, Madison inherits, but the trust has strict provisions. Any spouse married less than 10 years has 0 claim to the business. Even Madison herself can't sell or transfer assets without approval from a board of advisors, which will establish. Will that hold up? If we do it right now, before the engagement becomes marriage, absolutely. It's your property, your business. You have every legal right to protect it. And if this Ethan character is what you think he is, the prenup becomes a test. A man who truly loves Madison will sign it without hesitation. We spent 3 days restructuring everything. moved the vineyard into a family trust with provisions so ironclad that even a team of lawyers would need years to crack them. Set up the trust so that any attempt to force sale or transfer would trigger automatic court oversight. Created a prenuptial agreement that was fair to Madison but gave Ethan exactly zero access to family assets. Then I invited them both to dinner. Ethan arrived with that same practiced smile, carrying expensive wine like we were all friends here. Madison looked nervous, sensing the tension. We ate mostly in silence until dessert, when I slid the documents across the table. "These are for you both to review," I said. "Two things. First, a prenuptial agreement. It's standard protection for both parties. Gerald has assured me it's fair and reasonable. Second, documentation about the family trust I've established for the vineyard." Ethan's smile froze. "A trust? As of 3 days ago, Blackwood Vineyards is owned by the Blackwood Family Trust. I'm the trustee. Madison is the beneficiary. But the business itself can't be sold, divided, or transferred without unanimous approval from a board of advisors. I've appointed Gerald, Marcus Chen, and 2 of our oldest vineyard partners to that board." "You can't do that." Ethan's voice had gone flat. "I already did. It's my property. These are simply protective measures that any responsible parent would take." I turned to Madison. "Sweetheart, this doesn't change anything for you. When I'm gone, you inherit everything. But it ensures the vineyard stays intact, stays in the family, exactly as your mother and I always wanted." Madison looked at the papers, then at Ethan, then back at me. "Dad, this feels like you don't trust Ethan. This has nothing to do with trust. This is about protecting what 5 generations of Blackwoods have built. If Ethan loves you, he'll understand that." I met his eyes. "The prenup simply states that assets brought into the marriage remain separate. What you build together stays yours together. But what existed before stays separate. It's fair, standard, and non-negotiable." Ethan stood up so fast his chair scraped. "Madison, we need to talk. Alone." They went outside. Through the window, I watched him gesturing, his face red, Madison shaking her head. The argument lasted 15 minutes. When they came back in, Madison's eyes were puffy. "I think we should go," she said quietly. "Madison, please, just have Gerald explain." "Dad, you've made your position clear. We'll review the documents and get back to you." They left. Ethan didn't say goodbye, didn't even look at me. Just put his hand on Madison's back and guided her to the car, like she was property he was protecting. I didn't hear from Madison for 6 days. Every call went to voicemail. Every text went unanswered. On the 7th day, Gerald called. Ethan hired a lawyer. "They're claiming the trust is a fraudulent transfer, that you're trying to hide assets. They're threatening to contest it. Can they win? No, but they can drag it out, make it expensive and ugly. Robert, this guy isn't backing down. He's escalating." That night, I made a decision that would either save my daughter or lose her forever. I called Ethan directly. "We need to meet," I said. "Just you and me. No lawyers, no Madison. Let's talk this through like men." He agreed. We met at a bar halfway between Austin and the Vineyard, neutral territory. Ethan was already there when I arrived, drinking whiskey in a back booth. "Robert." He didn't stand. "Come to see reason?" I sat across from him. "I want to make you an offer." His eyebrows rose. "I'm listening. $500,000. Cash. Walk away from Madison. Tell her the relationship moved too fast, that you're not ready. Whatever story lets her keep her dignity. Take the money and disappear." Ethan laughed. Not a fake laugh, but genuine amusement. "You think I'm here for $500,000? Robert, your vineyard is worth $20 million. The property alone is worth 30. You're offering me crumbs. I'm offering you a clean exit. Take it, and you get to walk away with something. Push forward, and you get nothing. The trust is unbreakable. The prenup is non-negotiable. Even if you marry Madison, you'll never touch the vineyard. You're assuming Madison will choose you over me." Ethan leaned forward. "Here's what's really going to happen. I'm going to marry your daughter. We're going to have a beautiful wedding that you can either attend or not, your choice. And over time, Madison is going to see that your possessiveness, your need to control her life, is toxic. She'll distance herself from you. And when you're old and alone and desperate for connection, you'll regret every choice you made tonight. Is that what happened with Angela? With Jennifer? With Sarah? The change in Ethan's expression was instant. The mask dropped, revealing something cold underneath. I don't know what you think you know, he said slowly. I know everything. 3 marriages, 3 divorces, 3 families destroyed. I know about the pattern, the method. I know you're broke. I know Madison is just the next Mark. I pulled out my phone, showed him the folder Marcus had compiled. I have documentation going back 15 years. Every court filing, every business transfer, every woman whose life you ruined. Ethan stared at the phone, his jaw working. You can't prove intent. Nothing I did was illegal. Maybe not. But it's a hell of a story. Local vineyard owner exposes serial con artist. Small-town journalists love this kind of thing. Social media, too. Even if nothing leads to criminal charges, your reputation becomes radioactive. No more wealthy families. No more trusting daughters. You become the cautionary tale mothers warn their daughters about. You'd do that to Madison? Humiliate her publicly? I'd do anything to protect her. That's the difference between us. You see her as an asset. I see her as my daughter. I stood up. 500,000. Final offer. Take it and disappear, or I burn your life to the ground and watch you scramble through the ashes. I walked out before he could respond. 2 days later, Madison showed up at the vineyard, alone. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. When I opened the door, she didn't say anything, just walked past me into the living room and sat on the couch where she used to read books as a child. Ethan and I had a fight, she said finally, about the prenup. He said if I truly loved him, I'd refuse to sign it, refuse to let you control our marriage before it even starts. She looked up at me with Catherine's eyes. Dad, why don't you trust him? This was the moment, the choice between protecting her and losing her. I sat down next to her. Madison, what do you know about Ethan's previous relationships? He's been married before, he told me. It didn't work out. How many times? She hesitated. Twice. He said he married young, made mistakes. 3 times, sweetheart. He's been married 3 times. And before you, there were 2 other engagements that ended badly. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder. I hired a private investigator, not because I don't trust you, but because something felt wrong and I needed to know if I was being paranoid. I showed her everything, every document, every court filing, watched her face change as she read about Angela, Jennifer, Sarah, watched her hands start shaking when she saw the pattern of asset transfers, the quick marriages, the calculated exits. This can't be right, she whispered. He wouldn't. There's more. I pulled up financial records Marcus had obtained. He's broke, Madison. Deep in debt, gambling losses, failed investments. The vineyard isn't something he wants. It's something he needs. She sat there for a long time, just staring at the documents. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. At dinner last week, he asked me about your health, asked if you had any cognitive issues, any signs of declining capacity. I thought he was just concerned. She looked at me. He was planning something, wasn't he? Building a case that you weren't competent to make decisions? Probably. It's a common tactic in situations like this. Isolate the target, discredit any opposition, then move in for the extraction. How long have you known? A few weeks. I wanted to be sure before I said anything, and I was terrified that telling you would push you away from me. I took her hand. Madison, I'm sorry. Sorry I didn't see this sooner. Sorry I wasn't there to protect you from this. But you need to know, I didn't do this to control you. I did this because you're my daughter and I would rather lose you than watch you be destroyed. She started crying. Not dramatic sobs, but quiet tears that hurt worse to witness. I pulled her into a hug like I used to when she was little, and the world felt too big. What do I do? She asked. That's your choice. But whatever you decide, I'm here. No judgment, no conditions. Just love. She stayed at the vineyard that night. The next morning, she asked to see all of Marcus's findings again. Spent hours reading every page, every detail. I made coffee and stayed quiet, letting her process. Around noon, she made a phone call. "Ethan, we need to talk. Meet me at Dad's Vineyard. 1 hour. Bring the prenup." He showed up 45 minutes later, that same practiced smile in place. But when he walked in and saw Madison's face, saw the documents spread across the table, the smile disappeared. "Madison, whatever your father told you, is your real name Ethan Kowalski?" she asked. He froze. "Were you married to Angela Chen, Jennifer Park, and Sarah Bennett? Did you extract millions from their families through manipulation and calculated relationship fraud?" Her voice was steady now, lawyer-like. "Did you approach me specifically because you researched my background and identified me as a potential target?" "Madison, you have to understand, those relationships were complicated. The divorces were messy. Your father is spinning this to make me look. Answer the question. Yes or no?" Ethan looked at her, then at me. I saw the calculation in his eyes, weighing options, looking for an angle. Then something changed. He realized he'd lost. "It's not what you think," he said finally. "Then explain it to me. Explain why you changed your name. Explain why you didn't tell me about your real past. Explain why you asked about my father's cognitive health. Explain why a prenup that protects both of us equally is somehow unacceptable." She stood up. "Or don't, because I already know the answer." "You're making a mistake," Ethan said, his voice turning cold, walking away from me. "You think you're so smart, but you're just a naive little girl playing detective. Your father manipulated you, fed you lies. Get out. Madison, get out of my father's house. Get out of my life. If you contact me again, I'll file for a restraining order. If you try to spread any stories about me or my family, I'll make sure every woman you've ever hurt knows exactly where you are and what you're planning. You want to call me naive? Try me." For a moment, I thought he might argue, but something in Madison's eyes must have convinced him. He turned and walked out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. We stood there in silence, listening to his car start, listening to it drive away. "I feel so stupid," Madison said quietly. "You're not stupid. You're trusting. There's a difference. I thought I was helping him. Thought I was seeing something good in him that no one else could see. How did I miss all the signs? Because you're Catherine's daughter. You see the best in people. It's not a weakness. It's who you are." I pulled her into another hug. But sometimes the best people need protection from the worst. The wedding was canceled, obviously. Deposits lost, invitations unsent, explanations made to confused relatives. Madison stayed at the Vineyard for 2 weeks, just hiding from the world while she processed everything. Some days she was angry. Some days she cried. Some days she just sat in the vineyard and stared at nothing. But slowly, she came back to herself. Marcus ran a few more checks to make sure Ethan had truly disappeared. He'd moved to Denver, according to social media. Already had a new girlfriend, another young woman from a wealthy family. Marcus made an anonymous call to her father, shared just enough information to plant seeds of doubt. We couldn't save everyone, but we could try. 3 months after the canceled wedding, Madison and I were having dinner at the Vineyard when she brought it up. "I want to learn the business," she said. "The Vineyard? You've been doing this alone for too long." And I realized something. This place isn't just a business. It's a story. 5 generations of people who built something that mattered. Mom loved this place, and I want to understand why. You don't have to do this for me. I'm not. I'm doing it for me. Ethan made me feel like I was just an inheritance, just an asset attached to wealth. But that's not who I am. I'm a Blackwood, and maybe it's time I figured out what that means. So she started coming to the Vineyard twice a week, learning about soil, about growing seasons, about the chemistry of fermentation. She was terrible at it initially, asked 1,000 questions, made mistakes, but she kept showing up, kept trying. 6 months later, she moved into the guest house on the property, said she wanted to be closer, wanted to really commit to learning. Her veterinary practice went to part-time. The Vineyard became her focus. A year after the canceled wedding, Madison stood at the edge of the vineyard at sunset, exactly where Catherine and I used to stand together. She'd just closed a distribution deal that would expand our reach into 3 new states. Her idea, her negotiation, her victory. "I get it now," she said. "Why you fought so hard. This isn't about money or property. It's about identity, about knowing who you are and what you stand for. Your mother would be proud of you. I'm proud of me too. For the first time in a long time," she smiled. "And Dad, thank you. For seeing what I couldn't. For protecting me when I couldn't protect myself. For loving me enough to risk losing me. You're my daughter. There was never a choice." We stood there as the sun set over 50 acres of vines that had weathered droughts, freezes, and 5 generations of Blackwoods. The land that Ethan Pierce had seen as an opportunity, Madison now saw as a responsibility, a legacy worth protecting, worth understanding, worth continuing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying the people who tried to hurt you. Sometimes it's about protecting what matters, about standing firm in the face of manipulation, about refusing to let predators take what doesn't belong to them. Ethan thought he could use love as a weapon. He thought he could exploit Madison's kindness and my desperation for family. He thought wealth made people weak. He was wrong about all of it. The vineyard stands. The family endures. And somewhere in Denver, Ethan Pierce is probably already charming another young woman, telling another story about how he's changed, how he's different. Maybe someone will stop him. Maybe someone won't. But Madison learned to see the warning signs. Learned that love shouldn't require you to ignore red flags. Learned that trust is earned through action, not demanded through manipulation. And in the end, that's worth more than any business deal, any settlement, any amount of money he could have taken. The best inheritance I could give my daughter wasn't the vineyard. It was the ability to recognize her own worth, to stand firm in the face of predators, to understand that being kind doesn't mean being naive. Some lessons cost everything to learn. We learned ours at the cost of a canceled wedding and a few thousand in deposits. Ethan's next victim might not be so lucky. But that's not my story to tell anymore. My story is about a father and daughter, 50 acres of grapes, and the understanding that some things are worth fighting for. Not because they're valuable, but because they're ours. And no one, no matter how charming or calculating, gets to take that away.